You ever heard a town breathe? That's the line that started it. 4 stupid words dropped like a match into gasoline. It came from a forum post, buried deep in an old thread on analogchronicles.net, a site for urban explorers and lost media junkies. The username was FreckGhost99. The post was simple. Mercy Hill isn't abandoned, it's paused. The signal runs on 199.4 FM. If you hear it breathing, leave. If it hears you breathing, it won't let you. I read that at 3:17 a.m., hunched over, my second-hand laptop, the glow painting shadows across my dorm room. Something about it felt wrong. Not scary, not at first. Just wrong. Like a crooked painting that you know you didn't hang like that. I should have closed the tab. Instead, I bookmarked it. "Bro, you're spiraling again," Josh said, rolling a red vines wrapper into a tiny ball and flicking it at me. I ignored him, eyes still glued to the screen. Mercy Hill. The town had been condemned in '81 after a supposed gas leak, but there was no concrete footage of the disaster. Just rumors. Rumors and a frequency. Josh leaned over and read aloud. Mercy Hill. Signal trap. Simulacra town. Repeats. Reality until you're part of the loop. LMAO. You seriously believe this Blair Witch knockoff? He wasn't wrong. But I was hooked. Let's go, I said. Josh blinked. You're serious? Weekend trip, 3 days. We take the gear, shoot footage, record whatever signal's playing on 199.4 FM. Maybe we blow up online. Get ad money. He hesitated. You think we'll see something? He asked. I looked at him, dead serious. I think we'll hear it first. It's about 20 miles from the last town. No cell reception, no Wi-Fi. We hadn't gotten a single bar since Waynesboro. I remember that moment so vividly. The gold-tinted afternoon light glimmering through the trees, bouncing off the windshield of our dented silver van. The leaves fell quietly outside. A riot of orange and gold, making everything look almost peaceful, deceptive. Josh turned back toward me with that mischievous grin of his. We are definitely dying. He meant it as a joke, I think, but something about the way he said it made me grip the camera just a little tighter. Casey was in the back seat, hunched over her leather-bound notebook, turning its fragile pages. Did you know the original experiments at Mercy Hill were a big deal? They were a major piece of Project 199.4, a Cold War thing the CIA was involved in. Analog signals, frequencies meant to implant auditory illusions, dreams, identity confusion. Josh let out a nervous laugh. So, MK Ultra meets Silent Hill? Cool. That's not quite it. Casey kept his eyes down, reluctantly adding, It's more like if a VHS tape learned how to dream and then forgot how to stop. I tightened my grip on the camera as we passed a rusted plaque barely hanging by a single bolt. Welcome to Mercy Hill, Est 1842, a safe place to call home. Safe place, I wondered. Safe for whom? The moment we crossed the town border, the radio died. Josh tapped the dial a few times. Station's dead. No, I kept my grip on the wheel. It's not. I turned the dial myself slowly until it fell directly on 199.4 FM. At first, there was only static, a rush of white noise, but then something began to seep through. It was a sound that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up, a kind of mechanical, rhythmic wheezing, like something struggling to breathe. Josh fell silent, his knuckles whitening as he turned toward me. That's breathing. Dude, that's actual breathing. Casey grabbed her audio recorder and clicked record. It's not real. Her voice was firm, trying to mask the nervous tremble. Just interference. Then the voice came through, a voice that seemed to cut through the static. Do not adjust your set. You are receiving us clearly. Mercy Hill accepts you. The radio fell silent. Nobody spoke. I kept driving down the cracked highway, past abandoned houses with rotting fences, trees that grew inward as if leaning toward us, as if the town itself was alive and listening. The heart of town was like something stranded in a freeze frame, a moment that hadn't been meant to last. The gas station's door was hanging on a single hinge, slowly swayed, by a breeze that didn't exist. Inside, I could see a rack of snacks, their packaging perfectly preserved. The diner's table still held plates of food, rotted to mush, yet somehow undisturbed. The church's bell hung sideways, disconnected from its rope, but spotless. There were no birds, no insects, not even the buzz of a fly, just silence. Pure, oppressive silence. Casey whispered from the back seat. Why is nothing decayed the way it should be? What do you mean? I asked quietly, reluctantly. She nodded, toward a storefront up ahead. The glass was shattered, but the poster within, a Vote Nixon 72 flyer, looked fresh. The colors hadn't faded, the paper hadn't yellowed. It was as if time had simply stopped. Josh tried to lighten the moment with a nervous joke. Maybe the town's just stuck in the past. And then, without warning, the church bell rang. Once. At some point, we split up to cover more ground. I stayed near the van while Casey wandered into what must have once been the school. Later, when we went over the footage she took, I could hear her whispering, almost like she was afraid the walls would listen. There's something wrong with the mirrors here, she said softly. They lag. When I move, it takes a second before my reflection follows. I thought it was just stress, but now I'm not so sure. Her camera moved slowly down the dim hallway, past lockers hanging open like broken mouths, their contents long gone. The intercom above crackled to life for a moment, spilling a warped murmur of sound. A voice maybe, but garbled, reversed, like a tape running backward. She stopped at a dusty trophy case, lifting the camera closer. That's when I saw it too. Team photos, lined up year after year from 1962 to 1980. The same students, the exact same pose, the same frozen smiles, over and over, as if time had copied and pasted them again and again. Then her breathing changed. The camera paused on one picture, the 1974 varsity baseball team. There in the back row was a boy. He looked exactly like Josh. That's not me. Josh's voice was firm, disbelief battling fear. It has your birthmark. Casey pressed a finger against the small spot under his left eye. The one you've had your whole life. That's impossible. His grip tightened on his hoodie. My mum said I was born in Baltimore. That photo's from 1974. We fell into silence, heavy silence, as the light drained from the world much faster than sunset. It was as if someone had turned down a dimmer, letting us fade into shadow. The nearby streetlights began to blink, first on then off, in perfect synchronization. On, off, on, off. It seemed deliberate, intentional, a kind of code. Casey whispered as she deciphered it. Welcome home. And then, without warning, the camera died, its battery flat, its viewfinder fading to black. And we were left in the growing dark, stranded, with only silence and that message ringing in our ears. We didn't stay by the van because it was unsafe. We stayed away because it wasn't changing. The whole town felt suspended, a movie set frozen in the middle of a scene. The trees didn't sway. The clouds stayed perfectly still in the purple-black sky. The dust in the air hung in place, glimmering as if it were resin with glitter suspended inside. And the van, our last real-world anchor, was slowly becoming a part of it. It was already covered in a thick layer of dry leaves. Leaves that hadn't fallen, but had simply appeared there, as if growing directly from its metal frame. So we kept moving. Josh found a side door into Mercy Hill Elementary. Inside, the school was cold, a piercing, artificial kind of cold, with fluorescent lights still buzzing quietly above us, casting a sickly glow down the abandoned hallways. The place was spotless, spotless in a way that seemed impossible. After all these years, as if the children had simply gotten up from their desks to go outside for recess and then just never came back. Casey's voice echoed softly in the stillness of the hallway. It's like nothing rots here. Everything's just preserved. I glanced around at the untouched desks, the pristine floors. Like the whole town is sealed inside a container. Or a petri dish, Josh added, his voice low, as if afraid the walls might hear. Casey hesitated. Or a loop. We all went, quiet for a moment, listening to the faint hum of the fluorescence, the silence pressing in. Then Casey spoke again, even softer. "Do either of you remember how we got gas to get here?" The question hit me like a cold slap. Josh frowned, brow furrowing. I don't. We were driving and I think we filled up outside Waynesboro." Casey shook her head, her eyes wide now. "No, that pump had an out-of-order sign. I remember that. I pointed it out." I felt my stomach twist. "So, how did we get here on an empty tank?" Silence. The kind that makes your heartbeat feel too loud, and then Casey said it. The words that made the air feel even heavier. Maybe we didn't. Casey wanted to investigate the main office, to see if there were any maps or files that might shed light on Project 199.4. Josh and I made our way toward the gymnasium instead. It was pitch black in there, but our flashlights cut across the hardwood floor, bouncing their beams off the backboards. The hoops still hung above us, their nets barely swayed by the stagnant air. A pair of sneakers sat at center court, perfectly laced, spotless, as if someone had just slipped them off. "Man, this place smells like copper," Josh whispered, his grip tightening on his flashlight. I nodded. "You feel that?" He nodded back. It was a pressure, a low-frequency hum. Not something you heard with your ears, but something you felt in your bones, as if we were standing close to a huge subwoofer or deep inside a giant throat. The town was humming again. Then, everything changed. Our flashlights began to flicker, casting wild shadows against the bleachers. And we heard it, the squeak of sneakers on hardwood. We froze across the court just at the edge of the light. Something was moving. Slow, measured, dressed in a school varsity jacket, the very same one Josh wore back at school. "Who's there?" Josh called quietly. The figure paused, just a step outside the reach of our beams. It was Josh, but it wasn't. The duplicate smiled. Not a kind smile, not a sane one, but something twisted, something awful. Its head twitched, a slight, irregular movement, as if the world glitched for a moment, a corrupted frame in a home video, and its lips began to move without making a sound we could hear. Josh stepped forward. "That's not me. I'm right here. That's not me." The figure's smile widened. Then it whispered, not to us but to itself, its voice pure static, its lips barely matching the words. "You already forgot. You already stayed. Welcome." Back then it rushed toward Josh. I tackled him just in time. The figure disappeared mid-stride, not into shadow but between moments, as if it were dropping in and out of reality. Josh was shaking, hyperventilating. It had my face. "My voice, I saw my scar." He didn't sleep that night, neither did I. While we were losing our minds in the gym, Casey stumbled upon something even more sinister. She found a box of old cassette tapes in a metal cabinet in the main office, tapes labeled in fading ink. Project 199.4, Phase C, Memory Repetition Trials. She played one, and I remember every word. I heard a man's voice first, and calm, clinical, the kind that made your skin prickle. He said, "Do you know where you are?" Then a woman's voice, shaky, confused, answered, "Mercy Hill." "I live here." He interrupted quietly. "You've answered that 43 times. You do not live here. Your hometown is Newark." The woman insisted, "No, I remember this place, the bell tower, my bedroom window." He pressed further. "Those aren't your memories. They've been projected into your perception through a repeated audio loop on 199.4 megahertz. Then, I heard her break down, crying quietly. "But I can feel the sun in the window. I smelled pancakes, and how do you fake that?" The tape began to warp, adding an overlapping chorus of a child's laugh and the ringing of a church bell, until the man's voice cut through, flat and chilling. "Mercy Hill isn't a place, it's a pattern." That last sentence kept replaying in my mind long after the tape fell silent. We set up our sleeping bags in a classroom, or at least we tried to. Josh wouldn't stop pacing back and forth, his silhouette gliding in and out of the weak glow from our flashlights. Casey was busy cataloging the tapes, adding notes to her growing pile of files, and I kept staring at the chalkboard. The same word was scribbled over and over, underneath thick smears of eraser dust. "Remember." then repeat, and finally replace. That night I fell into a dream I'm not sure belonged to me. I was in the church, wearing a choir robe, and I was singing in Latin. The pews were filled, but the people had no faces, just smooth skin where their features should have been. And instead of mouths, there were old analog dials, slowly turning back and forth, clicking quietly in time with the song. The organ played by itself, its notes bouncing off the stone walls. I turned toward the bell tower. Inside it, someone was watching me, and that someone was me, not smiling, not frowning, just waiting. Josh woke up screaming. He said he'd gotten up during the night, without me or Casey noticing, and walked back to the diner. He said it wasn't decayed anymore. It was spotless, bright. The jukebox was playing Blue Moon on a crackling loop. The people were there, sitting in their booths, but not really alive, just looping their gestures, lifting forks toward their mouths, blinking in perfect rhythm. One woman kept pouring coffee into a cup, over and over and over, even though it was already full. Then Josh saw something that broke him. He saw himself sitting at the counter, eating pancakes, smiling, obliviously locked in that eternal moment. Meanwhile, Casey stood at the chalkboard, frantically adding notes, arrows, and messages. "The town's a recursive pattern," she said quietly, "like a corrupted memory cache. It replays pieces of people until they become permanent." I turned to her. "So, what happens to us?" She paused, then turned and met my gaze. "The town doesn't kill you. It copies you until you become the new recordings, looping forever." The sun outside was static, a smeared disk stranded in a mustard yellow haze. It hadn't moved in hours. Everything was suspended, as if time itself had gotten caught in a loop. Casey sat cross-legged on the linoleum floor, cassette tapes, sprawled out in a circle around her, like a sinister set of tarot cards. Her hands trembled as she tugged thin, fragile reels of magnetic tape from their casings. She turned to me. "It's not just the signal. They embedded coordinates in it." Josh was slumped against the wall, his knees up to his chin. He hadn't said a word in over an hour, just kept glancing toward the window as if something out there was staring back at him. "That tape. Look." Casey held up a piece of paper, a black and white printout, a raw map rendered by a spectral filter. It shows the church's bell tower, and underneath, phase omega exit channel alignment. "Exit," I said quietly. Casey nodded. "I think the bell tower is the key. It's the origin point of the signal, maybe even the town's center." She fell silent, letting the rest remain unsaid. The heart. Josh's voice was barely a whisper when he spoke up, soft, detached. "I saw myself again, in the reflection, in the classroom window." I turned toward him. "When?" He didn't blink. "Just now." I walked over to check. There was only one reflection. Mine. We made our way through town, ghosts stranded in someone else's nightmare. The buildings were spotless now, the rust gone, the glass unbroken. Some stores even glowed faintly from within, their windows casting an aura of warmth that hadn't been there before. "This isn't how it looked yesterday," I whispered. Casey held up her electromagnetic field meter. "There's a massive energy shift." Josh fell a few paces behind us, his hands shaking, quietly repeating under his breath, "Not me, not me, not me, not me." The church loomed. Up ahead, its shadow cutting a black path across the pavement. The bell tower pierced upward into a sky that hadn't stirred since morning. Inside the church, everything was covered in white sheets. The pews, the railings, all draped in a heavy, colorless shroud. Every seat faced the altar, but there was no crucifix there. Instead, there was a solitary CRT television resting on a wooden pedestal, a VCR connected to its side. Casey pressed play. Static filled the screen, a riot of black and gray lines. Then an image began to clear. It was us, from just yesterday. We were entering the church, slowly, looking up, in awe. The camera was up in the choir loft, following us. Then something else appeared, a fourth figure, a silhouette that shouldn't exist. It looked like Casey, but that was impossible. Casey was the one holding the camera. The figure turned slowly. Then it stared directly into the camera, directly into me, and raised a finger, pointing upward toward the camera operator. The picture cut to black. Then a few words appeared, glowering against the void. Exit channel. Alignment failure. Repeat. We made our way up the spiral staircase to the belfry, each step a heavy, deliberate stride upward, the hum growing, until it filled my head, until I felt it in my bones. When we reached the top, I saw what we'd come for. The bell was not metal. Instead, it was a grotesque construct made entirely from fused tape reels, VHS tapes and cassette ribbons, their magnetic strips woven together. Above it hung a set of ancient wooden speakers, their mesh covered in decades of dust. A slow voice flowed from them. Channel not aligned, hosts not yet replaced, playback continues. Josh staggered forward, staring up at the construct. "Is that me?" he whispered. Across from him was a mirror, but in its reflection, Josh was gone. It was just me and Casey, staring back in disbelief. Then we heard something. Footsteps. And from the staircase, another Josh appeared. He was smiling casually, the kind of expression you'd give a friend you hadn't seen in a while. "Hey, I've been trying to find you guys. Weird loops, huh?" The first Josh turned in panic, his face a mask of pure fear. No. No. The new Josh stepped forward, still smiling, still calm. "You're glitching, man. It's okay. You can rest now." He reached out. The first Josh screamed and darted past us, down the spiral staircase faster than I thought he was physically able. The new Josh followed, whistling Blue Moon as he disappeared after him. We rushed after them, down and out, into the town. But by the time we made it back outside, everything was spotless, a perfect replica, a movie set made to look real, but not lived in. I turned to Casey, panting. "Was that a replacement?" She nodded slowly, reluctantly. "That wasn't the first. They've been watching us since we got here. Studying, replicating." "Why Josh first?" I asked quietly. "Because he doubted it was real. He doubted his own memories, his own identity. That's how the town gets in." She turned to me, piercing me with her stare. "How sure?" "I ought that you haven't been replaced already." We took refuge in the library. The moment we walked in, something felt profoundly empty. The books on the shelves, normally a riot of stories, knowledge, and imagination, were filled with nothing but blank pages, every single one, except for a children's picture book placed casually on a display shelf. The title made my stomach knot. "My Friend Looks Like Me." Inside were crude drawings in shaky lines. A faceless boy meeting another faceless boy. They become friends. Then the new friend slowly replaces the first, going to his school, talking to his friends, and even sitting at his dinner table. The last page chilled me to the bone. Now he goes to school for me, talks to my mum, and eats all my favorite cereal. I think I'm still me, but I don't remember how that feels. Casey unfurled the printout of the spectral map across a reading table. That signal from the church. I think we can interrupt it, align it, break its feed. "That means we need to find its broadcast relay, right?" I asked quietly. "That's the thing. Every analog signal traces back to a physical point. I think it's the radio station down the road." She began packing. Tapes, the recorder, the small box-like EMF reader. Then she paused and turned to me. Her expression was piercing, vulnerable, yet fiercely determined. "Before we go, say something only the real you would say. So I know it's you." I fell silent for a moment, wrestling with something I hadn't said to anyone in years. Then I whispered, "In 3rd grade, I buried my pet hamster under a fake gravestone made of Lego bricks. I kept it a secret. I think I was afraid someone would laugh at me." Casey nodded, a small, sad smile tugging at the corner of her lips. "That's real. That's sad. That's weird." "What about you?" I asked quietly. She opened her mouth, but then the church bell began ringing again, its deep clang piercing the silence. A call we couldn't ignore. 2 chimes. Not 1. 2. The ground trembled faintly beneath me. The buildings began to warp, Not in a dramatic way, but in a way that made my stomach knot. Paint peeled backward up the siding. Broken windows reassembled. Dead trees grew back their bark. The world was resetting itself, starting over. Casey fell to her knees, clutching her head. I rushed toward her. That's a new loop, isn't it? She nodded weakly. A thin trail of blood began to seep from her left nostril. I turned back toward the library's entrance. I turned the lock, securing us in, or hopefully keeping something out. Across the street I noticed a figure, motionless, silhouetted against the growing chaos. It was me. He was wearing the same clothes, the same backpack, but there was nothing in his expression. He slowly raised his hand, not in a greeting, but to point directly at Casey. The camera glitched, the feed cutting to pure static. "When the loop completes, you forget you ever left." Sign painted on the wall inside the Mercy Hill broadcast station. The streets were shifting. We could see it now. Subtle at first. Windows twitching, fences realigning, shadows creeping in the opposite direction. The whole town was breathing backwards, as if someone were slowly turning back a VCR. Casey fell silent. Her eyes were glassy. Her nosebleed dried into a thin crust at the corners of her mouth. She kept a death grip on her recorder and notebook, the last physical anchors we had. I stayed close, scanning for duplicates. Some version of us, but none appeared. Not yet. The broadcast station stood on the hill at the town's edge, just past a field of wheat that didn't move. Not a single stalk. It looked painted, frozen. The letters were gone from the metal plate above the entrance, just a rusted silhouette where the call letters used to be. Instead, someone had spray painted in shaky red. "This is not a station, it's a speaker." Inside, the air was thick, heavy and warm with the smell of melted plastic and iron. The main lobby was filled with a stack of ancient TV sets, all showing the same footage on a loop. A young boy in a yellow raincoat standing in the intersection in the center of town. He lifts a small radio to his mouth, speaks quietly. Then the footage resets. Repeat, repeat, repeat. Casey began to move faster, a nervous, purposeful urgency. She found the signal console, a mess of wires, switches, and dials, all thick with dust. Some were labeled channel gain, memory delay, simulacra output, loop. Initiation. Casey flipped through her notebook to match the settings to the map. Then she turned a dial. "That's it. We don't destroy the signal, we scramble it, we break its pattern. The town's a magnetic coil. It feeds on its own reflection. If we interrupt it, we might break free." She paused and turned back toward me. "It might let us go." I stepped forward, staring down at the panel. One label drew my eye. Channel replacement, initiate host merge, YN. "Don't touch that one," I whispered quietly. Casey nodded. "Definitely not." As she worked, a voice crackled through the monitor above us. The boy in the yellow raincoat again, but this time he spoke directly into the camera. His mouth didn't move, but the audio fell into place with his frozen image. "You can't leave without leaving something behind." The footage glitched, then jumped. It briefly showed the church, then Josh, but a cleaned-up Josh. His hair combed, his smile perfect. "We're all happy now. It doesn't hurt when you stop remembering." The monitor blinked off. Boom. The front door slammed somewhere down the hall. We froze. Heavy, dragging footsteps drew closer. Then, "Hey." I turned. Another me stood there, wearing the same jacket, with the same dirt on the knee. But his eyes, they were empty, his expression a mask, a smile pasted over something hollow. "Casey," he said quietly. "He's not real. I'm the original. You have to know that." Casey stood between us, wide-eyed, unsure. "Prove it." I stepped forward. "When we were 12, I copied your poem off your notebook in English class. Then you cried because it won the school prize." She blinked. "You remember that? I also gave the prize money to you after school. Told the principal I cheated." She turned toward the other me. "Your turn." He smiled. "Too late." Casey turned the simulacra output dial, turned it all the way down. The duplicate glitched, flickered in and out, a skipping tape, until it fell forward, and fell to the floor in a pile of VHS ribbon. Casey flipped the final switch. Outside, the church's steeple groaned, a deep stomach-churning moan, the kind you feel when something is turning inward, collapsing. The hum we'd been following grew sharp, angry, dissonant. On the monitors, the town began to warp. Time slipped forward, then back, then forward again. Buildings blinked in and out. Duplicate people walked in looping lines, bumping into each other, like corrupted GIF files. Casey screamed, her hands over her ears. "It's collapsing the loop!" The town didn't like that. The walls of the station pulsed. The metal seemed to breathe. We turned and ran down the back corridor as ceiling tiles fell from above, warping and dripping like melting wax. Outside, the field was on fire, but the flames burned in reverse, upward into the sky, forming a long, shimmering spiral in the clouds. Casey tightened her grip on my arm. "There," she said quietly, pointing. Across the field, at its very edge, the van was waiting. For us, exactly where we'd left it, still covered in leaves. We jumped in, turned the key, the radio hissed alive with static. Then a voice whispered, "Playback complete. No active hosts remaining." The engine turned over without a protest. I didn't question it. I just drove, forward, away from the town, its nightmare. As we crossed the town's edge, the signal fell silent. The air grew clear. The scent of wet grass and exhaust filled the cab. A breeze flowed in through the windows. Casey started to cry, not from fear, but from pure relief. I pulled over after we'd gone about 10 miles down the highway. We turned off the engine, climbed up and sat side by side on the hood of the van, and we watched the sky, a purple-black canvas slowly clearing as the spiral fell away. We never found Josh, and we never went back. The tapes we brought back degraded into pure static within 2 days. Casey tried to upload the audio recordings online, but they glitched every system. The 199.4 signal always forced its way back, burrowing under reversed breaths and looping whispers. Eventually, she burned everything. I haven't spoken to her in years, but sometimes late at night I find myself turning the dial on my old radio, just to check. And when I reach 199.4, I hear it again, like something alive, hissing just on the edge of understanding. A voice that's not a voice. A broadcast from somewhere that should not exist. You didn't survive. You just got overwritten. VHS note mailed directly to Casey. The tapes came in a cardboard box with no postage, no label, just left quietly on her doorstep in the middle of the night. Casey hadn't called me or texted me since we got back. But when the phone rang that night, and I heard her shaky voice on the other end, I knew something was profoundly wrong. Mercy Hill hadn't let us go. I remember sitting on her couch, side by side, as she slid the tape into the VCR. The footage clicked into view, a perfect replica of her bedroom, her messy dresser, the crack in the window pane, the lava lamp slowly glowering purple by her mattress. At first, the room was empty. Then, she walked in. The same Casey I know wearing, the same jeans, the same sweater, but something was off. Her gait was stiff, mechanical. She turned, sat down on the mattress, and then slowly smiled directly into the camera. Day 4. I'm remembering less. The loop feels safe. Then she fell backwards, resting stiffly against her. Pillows. The picture glitched and a rush of static, then cut to black. Handwritten at the end, "You never left." Casey turned to me, pale, silent. I don't remember doing that." "Are you sure?" I said quietly. "That's not something you forgot. That's something you shouldn't remember at all." She fell silent. Then, without a word, she stood up and walked into her bedroom. When she came back, she was holding something in her hands. A heavy old Hi8 camera, a Sony, the kind we used back in Mercy Hill. "It was in my closet," she said quietly. "That's impossible. We hadn't brought that camera back with us." The second tape was worse. It opened to the interior of our van from the back seat. The camera's view was locked in place, but I recognized the moment. It was the day we escaped. Casey was crying quietly in the passenger seat, staring down at her lap. I was at the wheel, humming under my breath, a nervous habit I hadn't noticed until then. Then at the 31-minute mark, something stirred in the back seat. A second me slowly sat up. He turned his face toward the camera. He smiled, an awful casual smile, then whispered, "He thinks he's driving." The footage cut to black. Casey turned to me. Her expression was raw, vulnerable, afraid. "Was that you?" I didn't answer, because I honestly didn't know anymore. I think Mercy Hill isn't a place to us, it's a signal, and the signal came with us. It's not something we left behind. It's something we carry with us, inside us, across time, across memories. I don't sleep anymore, not because I'm afraid, although I am, but because every time I close my eyes, I'm there, back in that church, at the bottom of its spiral staircase, watching myself watch the monitors. The replacements aren't just copies, they're archives, snapshots of us, and then they rewrite reality with those archives. I think the version of me outside this page is already overwritten, but maybe, just maybe, if I can scramble the signal again, I can break the loop and bring back something real. 2 days later, I got a voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. "Hey, it's me. If you're getting this, then I'm not me anymore." I went back. I had to. If I destroy the tower, maybe I can stop it from broadcasting, but if I don't make it, burn everything. And whatever you do, don't trust your reflection. After a long pause, it continues. Also, check your fridge. Something came with you too. I opened it. Tucked away behind an old pizza box was a cassette tape. The label was shaky, handwritten, U01 Rec. I didn't play it. Not yet, because I know what it is. 3 months after Casey disappeared, a new YouTube channel appeared, Freck Sleeper 99. It began posting grainy VHS rips with titles that made my skin prickle. Mercy Hill Church Loop. Josh Duplicate 3.VHS. You are still here. Every Friday at 3:33 a.m., the channel streams a live broadcast. The feed shows a looping hallway, a long fluorescent corridor, and every so often, someone walks by, always the same person. Me. The tape started with my own trembling hand holding the camera, but it was Casey's face filling the frame. She was bleeding from the ears, eyes wide, whispering like she was trying to reach through the screen, through time, through me. Casey. But not like I remembered. Glitched. Flickering between the friend I knew and something hollowed out. Her voice was low. Measured, almost resigned. If you're seeing this, you're not watching. You're remembering. The signal. It doesn't broadcast anymore. It's inside us now. It spreads through memory. Copies the town, street by street, room by room, into your head. You live there now, you always did. Her face warped again, like the tape itself was rejecting the image. The sound stretched, slowed, fragmented, but her words stayed clear. Don't adjust your set. You're receiving us. Clearly, the screen dissolved into static, and then a single phrase, white text, black screen, "Welcome home."